Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member. Mr. Myron, I appreciate your conversation with me yesterday, your commitment to Fed independence, and just taking so much time talking through questions with me. I look forward to supporting your nomination. To all of you, we appreciate you being here. Mr. Burke, I want to start with you. The role you've been nominated for, it focuses on counter-terrorist and illicit financing. And look, this is something that we saw the last administration literally allow go to the wayside. When you look at what happened with Iran, us not using every tool in our toolbox to squeeze them dry financially, what happened was billions of dollars obviously moving into the oil regime. We now have an administration that is taking this seriously, understanding that Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorists, and every single dollar that they have, they use to advance that goal. My question for you is, looking at President Trump's maximum pressure campaign, driving that, I think we've seen real successes here, but can you speak generally to the seriousness of this, and how critical is it that we enforce the sanctions that are on the books to the fullest extent, particularly when we're talking about the Iranian regime?
Thank you, Senator. I very much appreciate the question, and I share your concern about the need for sanctions to be effective. And I think one way to do that is to understand, and as you mentioned, President Trump has re-implemented the maximum pressure campaign on Iran. And I know from my previous time at Treasury working on that issue, what that actually means. It's a multifaceted approach. It's not just about imposing new sanctions on new targets, but it's actually complemented by extensive diplomatic engagement with partners and allies around the world, and also the private sector, to identify the risks associated with exposure to Iran so they can take action as well to curtail that Iranian activity. And we've certainly seen that in the past when there is a maximum pressure campaign. And that has an effect on Iran's ability to raise funds and move those funds through the system. We also saw just this week, Secretary Bessent announce new sanctions on Iran and had a video message that explained this process. And also what's very important to complement that maximum pressure is that the world understands the United States is intent on targeting actors around the world who continue to support Iran's activity, and that's what the actions this week did. And Secretary Bessent made reference to some of the impacts that those actions have seen in terms of reducing Iran's oil revenue, but also reducing its ability and disrupting its ability to move funds and to move logistics around the world to procure or trade in oil. So if confirmed, I look forward to supporting that effort.
Excellent. I want to kind of drill down on secondary sanctions. I mean, we know, particularly in the last administration, where we had lax sanctions, where they weren't enforcing them, allowing countries in Southeast Asia to openly disregard our sanction policy and sell Iranian crude oil to China. We saw it happen. I think it's absolutely unacceptable. And I'd argue one of our most effective tools is actually secondary sanctions to discourage foreign countries and entities from doing business with Tehran. And I'd like to know, what are your thoughts on that, and how can we better utilize the secondary sanctions available to us to use them against these nations that attempt to undermine the United States and aid Iran?
Thank you, Senator. I think it's a very important concept, and it goes to the multifaceted maximum pressure campaign approach. Secondary sanctions are intended to change behavior. And I think when you add that extensive diplomatic engagement, which has been used very successfully in the past, with the credible threat of U.S. action to those actors who continue to support that illicit behavior, secondary sanctions will be very effective at changing that behavior.
Well, I want to stay on national security for a second, and Mr. Pinkerton, I'm going to come to you. When looking at China, the CCP is clearly looking to undermine America at every single turn, and one of the ways I feel like they've done that, obviously, is buying up American agriculture and farmland. I think many of us on this dais, particularly on this side, have been fighting against that with bills and legislation trying to push back. I know that this committee continues to be engaged, particularly in the CFIUS realm, and the ability to properly review the foreign land purchases near sensitive military sites. I can assure you that China is not allowing America to buy up land around sensitive military sites there in China, right? So my question to you is, will you commit to working with us to ensure that we actually are able to move the needle in this regard, if confirmed, to this role?
Senator, thank you very much for the question. I will absolutely commit to working with you and this committee on these really important national security matters. When it comes to farmland, I think Secretary Rollins has said food security is national security, and I completely agree with that. And also working very closely with the Department of Defense to ensure that those bases remain secure, and working on some of the legislation that's been presented from this committee. So from a technical assistance perspective, and also meeting with you and your staff, I'd be honored to work with you on that.
Look, we need to get this done. Time is of the essence. So thank you all.